wanted to make a quick video here, primarily dealing with current events. This month's playlist that I've put together, the four are now hidden, removed, shadow banned by BoobTube, I believe, but I managed to back up all but one of them. But before it all goes down the BoobTube rabbit hole and disappears forever, I wanted to grab some of these kind of important to me and current topics and put a little montage together because I've seen and spoke to a few people that have pontificated that they believe the whole reason for the overturning of the Roe v. Wade was so that they could remove the gay marriage rights. And I don't believe that at all. And I've heard very few truthers. But before it all goes down the BoobTube rabbit hole and disappears forever, I wanted to grab some of these kind of important to me and current topics. It's really about dividing us. That's all the government ever does is try to divide us against ourselves so that we won't go against them. I mean, it's obvious that the Democrats have a supermajority. They could have made that a law so the Supreme Court couldn't have done it, but that gives them something to get their base motivated to vote for them. These votes are just the illusion of choice anyway. Red or blue team is all like each wing of the same dirty bird, I've heard it said, and that's true. So you're wasting your time. We need to avail ourselves of what the Constitution allows, which is the reformation of our government when they fail to work for us. And they've not worked for us for a good long while. They're actively trying to destroy our economy. And on things that they could do, like end the Fed, there's no reason for us to be in debt. Money should be created out of nothing like Lincoln and Kennedy did, which I'm sure is the main reason they were executed or assassinated, if you will. But on that, I digress. I would like to say, though, that this, back to this topic of the abortion ban not being the chief reason is not to repeal the gay marriage. That's not what, in my opinion, they're attempting to do. So I want to put it out there before it happens. It's kind of like predicting the outcome of the Super Bowl. It wouldn't do me any good to make the video after the game is played, right? If I'm trying to inform people in my audience that these sports are 100% rigged, I have to show you who's going to win before they play the game. And if I do that enough times, eventually you're going to say, well, you're not just lucky. There's got to be something more to it than that. You couldn't be that lucky. So, really, they're trying to keep people, like I said, fighting against ourselves. But with this, they're setting up a paradigm of thought that the blue state will go ahead and make abortion legal. And those states will then again also legalize you getting forced vaccinated. And the red states will ban abortion and set up the logical, conundrum of you not being forced. And they were talking to the people, and she said, ask them a simple question. You believe in my body, my choice. What do you think about forced vaccinations? And all of them agreed with my body, my choice on abortion, but said the vaccination was different. And that's that goes back to what the book of James says is a double-minded person is unstable in all their ways. These are not truthful people. They're hypocrites. They're liars. So of course they're going to have dichotomies of where they believe my body and my choice on one side of an issue, but there is no choice. So to recap, in this humble truther's opinion, the con job 1984 poke, if you will, is the real reason they've repealed the Roe v. Wade Act. And Biden here, Uncle Joe, tells you that. This way, liberal states like New York and California can bring into law forced vaccination of these jabs once they come out with the new, what is it, moronic variant to scare you with this fall and force you in those states to get this stuff. Because as he points out in this video that I'll show you, the Supreme Court is taking away your constitutional rights. That's how he wants to frame this, as if they have the right to take away your rights. They are purposely doing away with the idea of my body, my choice. That's the purpose behind it.
Today, the Supreme Court of the United States expressly took away the constitutional right of the American people.
Back in 1973, I was a very confused 21-year-old with one child and facing an unplanned pregnancy.
Oh, sob story. In 1973, I was pregnant. I got knocked up and I couldn't do anything. Listen close. Listen to the deception.
At the time, I fought to obtain a legal abortion, but the truth be told, I have 3 daughters and have never had an abortion.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Stop the presses. This Krabby Patty, this red Krabby Patty, said that she did not have an abortion. The very plaintiff that established the 1973 world-changing event within the so-called African American community, this Krabby Patty said she didn't have an abortion.
However, upon knowing God, I realized that my case...
Wait, then she says that she knows God. What God is she talking about? What God are you referring to? Not the God that says thou shalt not kill. Not that one. Not the God of Israel. Surely not that God. Because he says thou shalt not kill. But you know what? The God Molech, which is the deity of these Christian churches, aka Baal, aka Chemosh, aka Molech, all of these modern systems of worship across the world worship Baal. They worship Molech. And if you read in the Bible, you find out that Molech was the deity where they sacrificed human children, infants, babies, just like here in America.
We were given this free thing from the Society of America abortion. 78% of your free abortion clinics were placed in Black and urban areas for the purpose of something free of charge from a racist society. As to put it in the words of one pro-abortionist, we don't need so many Negroes anymore. There's no more cotton to pick. These feelings about Black people, this was one way of doing it as a social benefit, if you will. We're here to help you. Black women, and let it be stated, Black women never demonstrated, demanded, or even requested the right to an abortion. Been asking for the right to decent housing, the right to education, in fact, the right to health care. And all we've been given free of charge is the right to kill our unborn child.
In just those states that have released their records, it is known that at least 60,000 Americans were sterilized, and they were disproportionately Black. In addition, during a 1973 lawsuit, a federal judge estimated that as many as 150,000 additional low-income women may have been sterilized under federal programs alone.
So under federal, meaning governmental programs, the same year, 1973, Roe v. Wade, what was going on in the United States of America? Forced sterilization. You know what that means? Forced hysterectomies. Wait a minute. I thought it was my body, my choice. How is it when they're convincing 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-old children to have forced abortions?
These sterilizations were often performed without the patient's knowledge or consent, and sometimes against their will. It was also common for social workers to tell welfare recipients that they would lose their benefits if they did not agree to be sterilized. In some cases, poor families were even threatened with the loss of welfare unless they brought their children in for sterilization. The result was that some of the people sterilized were as young as 10 years old.
This hurts my heart continually because people walk around with their heads in the sand and say, God bless America. Listen, they're as patriotic as a potato, okay? Because when real stuff is going on, that is clearly injustice and against civil liberties and against freedom, they stick their head in the sand and say, I don't know what's going on. No, there's no racism in America. No, in America, no. We love everybody. They were sterilizing children at 10 years old. They were sterilizing children without their consent at 10 years old. Did this child have the right to my body, my choice? Did this innocent little girl have that right?
In the first 6 months of 1972, one hospital in Aiken County, South Carolina, sterilized over 1/3 of the Medicaid patients who were there to give birth, and all but one of these women were Black. One patient said she was told by all 3 of the county's obstetricians that they would not deliver her baby unless she agreed to be sterilized.
You're living in a society where you can bring this is why people talk about high mortality rates with women, right? Because they don't know that historically speaking, when Black women were going to have babies, these Krabby Patties, these Edomites, went and said, sign this documentation and state that you will have us rip out your womb after you give birth to this child. Listen, this was worse than communist China with their one birth, one child, one male child policy that we know of. This was worse than that. This was worse than that.
Her claim was later confirmed by each of the doctors. Another patient said she was told by one of these same physicians that he was tired of having to help support the babies of welfare recipients and that she could either agree to be sterilized or find another doctor.
Okay, I'm done with this. The name of the documentary is Ma'afa 21, Black Genocide in the 21st Century of America. Look it up on YouTube to watch it. I can't go into it further because I'll just be too irritated to go into it any further because that's it. This is the picture of the woman. On her deathbed, she finally confesses through a documentary that she did not have an abortion. Let's touch on it briefly. It's based on the Washington Post. You can look it up through a Google search. What to make of Norma McCorvey? This week, a new documentary drops a boulder into the already complicated legacy of the woman better known as Jane Roe, the plaintiff in the landmark 1973 case that legalized abortion in America. In the mid-1990s, McCorvey had made a public religious and political conversion. Oh, she found white Jesus. She was baptized on television. This how you know this is fake. She was baptized on television in a backyard swimming pool. She wore overalls and came out beaming. All right, scrolling down an article. Let's see the point. Let's get to the point. Okay, so it says she never really supported. Oh, here it is. Here it is. She never really supported the anti-abortion movement. Hello. Hello. Where are all the fun? Where are all the gynocratic feminists? Where are they? Where are the misandrists now? She never supported. So your whole entire movement is based on a lie. A lie. And guess what? The Bible says, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not bear false witness. An entire movement created for the sole purpose of a eugenics program by Margaret Sanger. When you watch that documentary that I referred you to, My Offer 21, you find out this lady has ties to the KKK. She also has ties to the American eugenics movement, who had the sole purpose of creating a master race. There you go, folks. All based on lies. All based on lies. So let's scroll down. It says the revelation comes 60 minutes into the 80-minute documentary. By minute 70, McCorvey has died, succumbing to illness, leaving the people to know on both sides of the most polarizing cultural debate in America, slack-jawed and stunned. McCorvey never had an abortion. Of abortion on the Black community. This was published January 19th, 2020. They do offer also a PDF. So if you want to download this, study it, examine it for yourself, because we like statistical proven fact and not just rhetoric. You know, on the Forefront Radio, we like to talk about things, but we go based on facts. That's what we do. Facts. curepolicy.org/report/the-impact-of-abortion-on-the- I'm sorry, I keep saying dash, but you know what it is. Black community / All right, so here we go. Introduction. Abortion and racism are both symptoms. Abortion and racism are both symptoms of a fundamentally human error. Which group of humans are that? I wonder. The error is thinking that when someone stands in the ways of our wants, we can justify getting that person out of our lives. Let's talk about abortion and racism. Getting that person out of our lives. So which persons? Which groups are we trying to get out of our lives? Okay. We create the deceptions that the other person is less worthy, less human. We are all fully human. When we face this truth, there is no justification for treating those who look different than us as lesser beings. If we simply treat other people the way we'd like to be treated, racism, abortion, and other forms of inhumanity will be things of the past. Dr. Alveda King, pro-life leader and the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King. All right, good quote, good quote, good quote. All right, let's touch on it briefly. There's a lot of different quotations here, but let's touch on it briefly. Let me see, where will I start? All right, since the 1973 Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision, about 63 million babies have been aborted in facilities across the nation. 63 million babies, more than World War II, have been aborted in facilities across the nation. It can be said with certainty that the practice has had a personal, practical, and political effect on communities and citizens. Every town, city, ethnicity, and age group has suffered from the tragic effects of this most surgical and sometimes chemical procedure. The true toll of abortion may remain unknown and immeasurable because of the data. For the most part, has not been well collected or has been ignored by those responsible for it. Abortion has been the most unregulated industry in America because too many governors, legislators, and attorneys generally fail to enforce or write laws that actually protect women. You see that? There you go. It's not about protecting women, folks. It's not about women's rights, folks. The jig is up. In addition to the lack of regulation, the ravages of choice continue to take a toll on individuals, families, states, and our nation. It has been particularly harmful for Blacks, Black culture, and Black communities. So now let's fast forward down. Let's get some more statistical data. Under the paragraph entitled The Abortion Consumer, disproportionately the leading consumer of abortion services in the African American community is the African American female. So now, consider the fact that they were offering these services for free. When the heck did America ever give you stuff for free? You pay for water that falls out of the sky. You pay for electricity that was invented way, way back when, okay, that naturally comes out of the sky as well through lightning. So you pay for electricity, you pay for water, you pay for lumber, and you can go out, you can walk outside your apartment or outside of your house and you see trees, but you're paying for these things. So when did America ever want to give you something for free without there being an agenda? Let's read it again. Disproportionately, the leading consumer of abortion services in the African American is the African American female, according to the United States Census Bureau and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Abortion Surveillance Report. Black women made up 15% of the childbearing population in 2018, yet obtained 33.6% of reported abortions. There's a lot more that probably haven't been reported. Black women have the highest abortion ratio in the country with 335 abortions per 1,000 live births. Percentages at these levels illustrate that about 20 million Black babies have been aborted since 1973. Planned Parenthood targets minority neighborhoods, 21%, 79% over here. So it says in the green area, 79%, Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities near minority neighborhoods. So approximately almost 80% of all the Planned Parenthoods were surgically aborted children. These facilities were near Blacks, Native Americans, and Latino populations. So, guess what? Little lily white girls. They were traveling across the train tracks, going to the hood to get abortions, going to the cities, going to the urban areas, leaving the suburbs to come to the hood to get their abortions. That's what was happening. Then it says Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities in other neighborhoods, 21%. So this is the statistical data that you could look up on the website. Let's scroll down. Let's see here. The population nexus, the population control nexus. Abortion has been used as a part of the population control agenda. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg reminded the nation of this in her 2009 New York Times Magazine interview when she said, quote, "Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Populations that we don't want to have many of." And she was historically accurate. President Richard Nixon declared birth control for, quote, low income women, aka Black women. Whenever they use this terminology, that's what they're referring to. For low income women to be a national goal. In 1969, before signing the first federal birth control program into law in 1970. Nixon also cites certain concerns about controlling the Black population in conversation with White House staff that were recorded during his presidency. Some examples follow. Now, listen carefully, folks. This is a president of the freest nation in the world. Liberty, justice for all. Dun da da da. Pull out your Superman tights, right? But guess what? the most wicked system on the planet, who killed more children than World War II. Let us read. A majority of people in Colorado voted for abortion. I think a majority of people in Michigan are for abortion. I think in both cases, well, certainly in Michigan, they will vote for it because they think that what's going to be aborted generally are the little black bastards. This is a president. As I told you, we talked about it earlier, that a hell of a lot of people want to control the Negro bastards. People who don't control their families are the people that shouldn't have kids. These are the sentiments of Nixon, expressed during his presidency, that may provide context about his thinking when he announced the conclusions and recommendations of the 1969 Population Control Commission headed by John D. Rockefeller. So now I mentioned earlier that the abortion movement had its roots from a racist ideology, from the KKK, and the eugenics program. So let's touch on that real briefly before we conclude. It says, it is no accident. It is no accident that abortion has become so deeply entrenched within the Black community. Margaret Sanger, a founder of the American Birth Control Movement and the organization that is now known today as the Planned Parent Federation of America. Man, that sounds like some Nazi shit. Planned Parent Federation of America. Golly. Listen, this is a government sanctioned institution. This is a government sanctioned institution. PPFA was a leading spokesperson and activist in the promotion of controlling the birth rate among Blacks and others she considered undesirable. Here we go. Here's the heavy hitter. Here's the heavy hitter. In 1926, Sanger made a speech on birth control to a women's auxiliary branch of the Ku Klux Klan in Silver Lake, New Jersey. She endorsed the 1927 Buck versus Bell Supreme Court decision, in which the court ruled that states could forcibly sterilize people deemed unfit without their consent and sometimes without their knowledge. In 1939, Sanger co-authored a report, quote, Birth Control and the Negro, end of quote, which stated that Negroes present the greatest problem of the South, and advocated for a birth control program geared towards a population characterized as largely illiterate and that still breed carelessly and disastrously. This is the mindset of the devil. The Bible says that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. A supporter of eugenics, Sanger became a formidable force when pushing her Negro Project, designed to employ Black leaders to promote birth control and limit the Black population. Now, listen to this carefully. This is why anyone that reads the Bible wants to have nothing to do with the Black church, nothing to do with churches that promote white supremacy. Watch this. Sanger recruited Black pastors to persuade minority women to use contraceptive birth control. This is sterilization. We do not want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members, she said. So they used modern religion, which is white supremacy. Jesus is Black, clearly. So they use modern religion to deceive the masses, and they use Black pastors to do it. So your own people that look like you can be supporting this wicked system. That's why when you read Zechariah chapter 11, verse 5, it says, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that slay them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. The black leaders, the black politicians, the black pastors knew they're not dumb people. They are vastly intelligent. But someone was pushing a check, someone was pushing an agenda, and people have to wake up.
And you see it in what you buy, everything. The prices of everything are shooting beyond reach for a lot of people in the United States. That would include energy, food, durable goods, housing, education, credit. All of it is a lot more expensive than it was just recently. Why? Why has median rent in Manhattan jumped by 25% in a single year? Why has your grocery bill gone up by hundreds of dollars a month? Why can't you afford to fill your car anymore? Those are fair questions. It's not like we've run out of the commodities we need. The United States has a lot of them. It's a continental country. It stretches from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So we've got plenty of room for housing. We've got more than enough oil and gas within our own borders to be completely energy independent with some left over. We've got more fertile farmland than any country on the planet. Food should be cheap. So the problem is definitely not our resources. Our resources in the United States are abundant. The problem is our leaders. The things you need are too expensive to buy because politicians created inflation. And they did it for a simple reason. They'd racked up so much debt buying votes and enriching themselves and their families that they had no choice but to weaken the US dollar in order to make the payments on the loans they took out. It's that simple. And then once inflation arrived, ideologues in the Biden administration immediately understood how it could be used. So since you can no longer afford to drive your car, you will have no choice but to accept their green energy scams. And that means their donors who run those scams will get richer and they will get control over the U.S. economy. So everyone wins except you. It's perfect. None of it happened by accident. This is a manufactured disaster. Now, in a normal country, few leaders would dare to pull off something this brazen and destructive. They'd be afraid to. They'd be flirting with revolution. It'd be too risky. And the people who run our country are fully aware of the risks, and they're very worried about it. If you're wondering why they're hyperventilating about January 6th, that's why. They seem afraid because they are afraid. To them, a crowd of angry people at the Capitol looks a lot like a foretaste of things to come. That's exactly why they're so desperate to take your guns away. It's why they're screaming at you about trans rights and systemic racism and the all-encompassing evil of the president of faraway Russia. Huh? Why are they talking about these things? It seems confusing at first. What does any of that have to do with our actual problems here and improving your life? Well, none of it has anything to do with improving your life, and that's the point. They're hoping that if they keep screaming at you, you'll be too bewildered and too off balance to notice what is happening to the country around you, much less able to fight back against it. And just to make sure you're too bewildered to act, as they scream, they shift the blame from themselves to you. So they're now pronouncing you guilty for the crimes that they committed. You've watched this happen with the economy. First, they told you that inflation wasn't real. You're imagining that. But you weren't. So then they explained that actually inflation is happening, but it's a good thing because you deserve it. You deserve to pay more for the things you buy. Why? Because your expectations were way too high. You pampered first world Karen. You expected to eat meat for dinner and take an annual vacation on commercial airliners that departed on time. What were you thinking? You expected to fill your tank or buy a sheet of plywood for less than $75. Huh? Talk about out of whack. You expected to be able to send your children to the public schools you pay for with the expectation they might learn something. You thought you could load your car in the Safeway parking lot with groceries you could afford without being shot to death by armed robbers. You imagined you could live in a country that resembled the place you grew up in, where people spoke English and didn't throw trash out the window or smoke fentanyl on the sidewalk. But it turns out, Mr. and Mrs. America, you expected too much, and that's your fault. In Nigeria, all of this is normal. So stop whining and eat your bugs. Bloomberg News actually wrote a column on this. Their recommendation was, if you want to save money, let your dog die. Seriously. They really said that, and they meant it too. But apparently you didn't get the message. You love your dog. So now they've gone further than that. Now they're telling you that you cannot have the one thing that most people want more than anything else, the one thing that biological instinct drives all of us to want, and that's children. The most reliable source of meaning and joy in human existence, a family, is now out of reach for the American middle class, and you should accept that is inevitable. In fact, you should embrace it. Our economy can no longer support your family. Sorry. Actually, that's wrong. They're not saying sorry. They wouldn't think of apologizing for that or anything else. What they want to do is force you to reset your unrealistic expectations. And that's what MSNBC did all this weekend. Watch.
What does it cost to have a baby on your body, on your livelihood, and not just you, but your state and this country?
Many economists and social scientists are telling us that the economic consequences of abortion restrictions are devastating for both individuals and wider society. According to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, at the national level, state-level abortion restrictions cost $105 billion per year because basically it reduces the labor force participation rate, how many people are in the workforce, and drives down earning power.
So it turns out many economists and social scientists have concluded that having kids is selfish and way too expensive, and that's your fault. So dial back your expectations of ever having a family. Thanks for telling us, MSNBC and Jo Ling Kent. Notice that no one on MSNBC ever blames the powerful for where we are. Apparently, the U.S. government had no role in, quote, reducing the labor force participation rate, say by shutting down the entire U.S. economy and firing anyone who didn't get their vax, or turning cities into war zones, or devaluing the U.S. dollar. None of that actually happened. It's not their fault. Wall Street and the Fed are blameless. The problem is you. The problem is that you selfishly want to have children, and children are bad for GDP. All the big corporations now agree on that. They're all now against human reproduction. Watch Jo Ling Kent explain more.
But the other important financial question is if the birthing parent is able to travel and if they work for the right company and are seeking an abortion, more individuals we're seeing are going to need to rely on their employer, right, for that financial support to carry that out. Now, for example, Dick's Sporting Goods is now telling us they're promising $4,000 for any employee or family member on their insurance plan to access an abortion. And there's a long list of companies that are doing the same thing. You've got Levi's and Starbucks, Yelp, JP Morgan, and many others. But the point here is, Katie, is that these benefits are provided because these companies are willing to do it not just because of their philosophy as a corporation, but because it makes financial sense for them.
Dick's Sporting Goods will pay you $4,000 to abort your baby. How great is that? How great is Dick's Sporting Goods? You were going to have a baby, and now they're giving you $4,000 not to. And as Jo Ling Kent just told us, that makes financial sense for corporate America. Well, yes, it does. Thanks, MSNBC. We lost our calculator and couldn't do the math on that. It turns out the companies have done the math, and they'd rather pay female employees $4,000 for every abortion they have. That's cheaper than footing the bill for, say, parental leave or adding new dependents onto the company health care plan. Babies are expensive. It's a lot cheaper to get rid of them, has concluded the HR department at Dick's Sporting Goods. But keep in mind, this is a highly progressive movement. When you have to bribe employees not to have their own family, what you're really doing is liberating them. And if you doubt that, here's corporate America's spokesman, Andrew Ross Sorkin of CNBC, with the message once more.
The real challenge is going to be for the smaller companies that can't afford to do this, and for the employees of those companies that are unable to get access that way. And so there's going to be a tale of two worlds. If you work for a Fortune 500 company in America today, you very well may get this type of health care as a benefit. Smaller companies may not. And I asked the question over the weekend to a lot of executives and CEOs about this. Would you leave the state? Would you leave those states where those trigger laws are in effect? And the answer is no. The view is that this is, dare I say, a cost of doing business. And I was, I have to admit, disappointed that there was nobody that I spoke to over the weekend who said, you know what, we have a moral issue about this.
Yeah, it's very disappointing that all companies aren't paying their employees to abort their children. It's a sign of love, really, because when you love someone, your main concern is that they never reproduce. that they never create more human beings just like them. That's a sign of love. So according to Andrew Ross Sorkin, corporations, and this is not ghoulish or creepy, so settle down, choke back your gag reflexes. Corporations in states that outlaw abortions are unethical. The CEOs of those companies are immoral because they're not paying for enough abortion. Andrew Ross Sorkin judges them. You know who he doesn't judge? His friend Janet Yellen. Now, Janet Yellen isn't blameless. She lied to Americans for years about the inflation that she created. She single-handedly destroyed our economy more than any other single American. But that's not a problem for Andrew Ross Sorkin. It's not like she wasn't paying for her employees' abortions. And we're quoting, you know, if you're Janet Yellen, she's in a political job and they wanted to run the economy a little hot. That's what Sorkin said recently. And by running it a little hot, he meant destroy it and make the U.S. dollar worthless. It's just a little mistake. It's not a big deal. It's not immoral. Making you poor was a mistake. And don't worry, Janet Yellen has never even considered apologizing for it. No. What she's telling you is, now that you're poor, shut up and abort your child because times are tough and you got to get back to work. There's a war on. Do your duty.
I believe that eliminating the right of women to make decisions about when and whether to have children would have very damaging effects on the economy and would set women back decades.
Yeah, very damaging to the economy, having all those children, all that new life. This is the America that Janet Yellen has created with the help of her friends in the media. So you can't afford to get married or buy a house or have children, much less raise them yourself in a two-parent family on a single income, as every generation of Americans did for hundreds of years in this country. But for you, none of that is possible. Only private equity people like Janet Yellen, Andrew Ross Sorkin, can afford normal families now. But for you, things are very different. For you, life is low-paid drone work at some soulless digital company, punctuated only by brunch on the weekends and Netflix and white wine at night, forever, until you die alone with no descendants to remember you. Does the prospect of that fill you with joy, or does it make you a little anxious? If it makes you a little anxious, no problem, because we have Xanax. Also, we've legalized weed, so you can consider yourself liberated. What we just described is not an overstatement. That is the life that millions of college-educated young people in this country are living right now and are facing for the foreseeable future, which is to say forever. But our leaders don't seem concerned in the least about it. They don't detect a spiritual crisis in America or a lack of inherent meaning. Suicide spiked. They have no idea why. They don't want to know. They don't even notice a dramatic drop in birth rates in America, which you'd think they would care about since they run the country, and that's the clearest sign of societal health. If people aren't reproducing, maybe something's wrong. But no, it doesn't bother them. In fact, they're for it. Don't have kids, and if you do, make certain they can't reproduce themselves. Why don't you go ahead and chemically castrate them? That's what they're now telling you. Watch the Admiral.
Gender-affirming care is life-saving, medically necessary, age-appropriate, and a critical tool for healthcare providers. As a pediatrician, when it comes to making sure kids are healthy and happy, I know how important care that affirms someone's true identity can be.
So you made the mistake of having children, your own family. But there is something you can do. You can make sure you never have grandchildren. You can pump your children full of pharma-derived poison that makes certain they can never reproduce. And you should, because that's life-affirming care. So why are they telling you this? Well, simple. The more atomized and unhappy American society becomes, the easier it is for them to control. Fewer marriages and babies and family-owned homes means more rootless and dissatisfied people. It means an entire nation of desperately unhappy grad students. Sandy Cortez could become the queen of a country like that. So bring it on! More solitude, less human connection, less meaning, fewer babies. That's what they want. Obvious. Have you noticed our immigration levels recently? We're bringing people in to be your kid's mom. And by the way, shouldn't you be working for Facebook? Do your duty. That's what we're telling young people. We're telling them we're not going to do a thing to make it easier for you to have your own children or your own family, because families are for the rich and the poor. Families are for the tech tycoons in Napa. They've got a ton of kids. And for the Haitians huddled underneath the bridges at the border in South Texas, they've got a ton of kids too. But for you, a middle-class American, sorry, your deepest desires are far beyond reach. Citibank will pay you not to reproduce, so you can remain alone in your cube. And if you're not fortunate enough to work at Citibank, Sandy Cortez will step in and for the first time in her life build something. In this case, she'll build government-funded abortion camps on federal land just to make sure you never have to experience the burden of holding your own baby or being unconditionally loved by your own children. You're liberated now. Let's celebrate with brunch. You have to wonder, how long before Democrats sponsor legislation to distribute free cats to young people in the cities, placebos to replace the families they can no longer have? That's coming, along with SSRIs and the water supply, so you don't have to think too much about it. We're finally getting to see what their utopia looks like. Hope you feel better.
And his greatest reasoning for why there's no way it could be fake, the glass of water on the Chinese fake station, is because the astronauts are floating in space, dummy. Excuse me, Mr. NASA genius, could you tell me which rocket George Clooney and Sandra Bullock flew up to space in? Because we all saw them floating around in space, so it has to be real. They had to be in space because we saw them floating around. So which rocket did they go on again? Oh yeah, they didn't go to space. It was Hollywood. Kind of like the Hollywood NASA has been partnered up with in Disney since their conception. But no, there's no way they could be deceiving us. And that's again why I say these people are the most ignorant, naive, dangerous people on earth. Because they just swallow any propaganda thrown at them. They trust everything governments tell them and want to act like history doesn't show us. The people that kill the most people on earth consistently, always, are governments. It is incredible how fucking stupid these people are. They are the walking, talking argument for legalized abortion as far as I'm concerned. But that's another topic for another time. So, I'm going to leave as the thumbnail and a link to the Wikipedia, once again discussing augmented reality. How it explains it is used to distort the real environment in real time. As these morons continue to act like there's no way NASA could be using that to deceive you. There's no way NASA put contracts out looking for augmented reality companies to employ them years ago. This is all established, proven fact. Yet these propaganda-pushing puppets will continue to deny it and call anyone presenting these facts liars and confused and morons and idiots, blah, blah, blah. Project what they are onto us. And once again, the astronaut in the clip, the very same clip where the guy flies through the background with an obvious harness on his back before the guy takes the phantom hat and puts it on the shelf. That is absolute 100% proof. And you can see in his face as he looks at the screen where they tell their augmented reality items, he's busted. He knows he screwed up. There is no logical, reasonable explanation for that action. Oh, I know they'll come up with explanations, excuses, and reasons, but I said no logical explanation or reason for why that would happen. Unless they're, again, sending schizophrenic retards into space. Or they're using augmented reality to deceive us. No, well, not us. Those idiots. NASA fanboys. that can't get enough of NASA stealing Americans' money and using it to lie to them and program them and brainwash them and murder them. Just ask Gus Grisham's family. So, there you go. And until these bigger channels start presenting this augmented reality they're using to deceive us, and even have the balls to pose the question, and I'm not talking about bigger flat earth channels, obviously, but bigger channels like JP Sears and all these others that just avoid NASA and the deception they're pulling on the world. I see there's some new idiot TikTok wannabe Pharisee Christian putting up anti-flat earth videos. One of his brilliant arguments is, no flat earth can say anything about NASA because there's all these other space agencies. Well, we just proved the Chinese space agency is lying and deceiving you also. Obviously, if the earth is flat and there's all these space agencies, they're in collusion to deceive you, to hide God from you, to hide we are in a created realm, earth, whatever you want to call it. But willful ignorance and naivete reigns supreme and will continue to do so until these cowards get the balls to call them out. And maybe people will start to see, if they'll go to such lengths to deceive us about the shape of the earth, what the hell else are they lying to us about? It's incredible, man. It's incredible. The glory of God. He will allow them to believe their ignorant lies. His will be done. But that doesn't explain the water sitting in the glass perfectly still and level like it would on Earth. And their excuse is surface tension is holding the water in the glass. It's nonsense, and it's easily proven. Anyone that wants to get a clear plastic cup and drop it from a second-story window in their house and record it, preferably with a camera that can record in high speed so it can be slowed down and played back frame by frame, will see the result. If it was surface tension, the water would be riding up the sides of the glass and there would be a concave bubble in the middle of the glass like we see here. And I'm about to show you as it's demonstrated. Why do astronauts supposedly float around in the fake station? Because they're falling constantly towards the Earth. That's what we're told. So let's see what really happens when you drop a glass of water and it's falling. What happens due to surface tension, shall we?
After the glass has been dropped, surface tension pulls the water up the sides of the glass, forming a concave surface.
Surface tension pulls the water up the sides of the glass, forming a concave surface or a concave indenture in the middle of the glass.
When the glass is...
Okay, so that's all we're looking for. What is happening as the glass is falling, as it supposedly is in the Chinese fake station? Do you see the water riding up the sides of the glass and a concave indenture in the middle of the surface of the water? No, you don't, because it's augmented reality. They go on to do all sorts of neat little experiments with needles and bubbles and Alka-Seltzer in the water. My entire contention is the technology through augmented reality exists, and I contend is what they are using to perform those magic tricks. But it is clear to see right here, that glass is not falling and surface tension is not holding it in the glass, because our buddy Nick Moore here just demonstrated surface tension would pull the sides of the water up the sides of the glass and create a concave indenture in the middle of the surface of the water. So no, as usual, it's not surface tension that's going to get you out of this one, globeheads. You're going to just have to breeze over it and then completely ignore it like you always do, because you are nothing about truth. You're not trying to seek the truth. You're trying to defend lies and the thieves at NASA that steal our money to push them on us. Have a great day. Okay, so this is a prime example to me as to just how deceived and ridiculously abused the American people are being at the hands of our own government. This, I can assure you, is not conspiracy theory. This is absolute, provable fact to anybody that bothers to look. Tell me how many times you've heard about this drought in California and other places in the last decade. I believe California is under water restrictions as I speak. So, never mind the fact that as they sit right next to an ocean, how much has the federal government, pleaded to the people and sent tens of billions of dollars to build desalination plants, for one, or to address the situation at all, because they're such climate snowflakes. They're so worried about the climate and fixing the climate. So we've heard over and over and over about this drought. Meanwhile, over the same decade period of time, mind you, what I'm about to show you, these are not conspiracy sites. You will see reports from Time Magazine as well as other mainstream outlets. So, as we've heard incessantly about this California drought, how many have heard about the trucks that literally pull water from the air? I will leave the link for anyone that hasn't heard of this or thinks I'm making things up. Here we go, Time Magazine. Turn air into water with WaterGen's atmospheric water generator. That up to 450 gallons of clean water a day. So, why hasn't Joe Biden earmarked billions to create fleets of these trucks to send to California, where a massive amount of America's food is grown? And once again, people are now under water restrictions, as for a decade they've had technology, including in Ford cars, that literally pulls water from the air. I don't know how many times I can say, or my friends, my viewers, people paying attention can say, we are under attack. Your government is not out to protect or serve you. They've been about nothing but using and abusing you for as long as I've been alive. Figure it out already.
First-time unemployment claims came in worse than expected, and housing starts fell off of a cliff. I'm watching Bloomberg this morning. Oh, the U.S. might already be in recession. People, we are so far beyond a recession. We are in collapse, okay? And this is a phenomenon that is global. You all know that.
It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. Everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And you better brace yourself.
We're in a free fall here. Our global economy, it's dead. It's over. It's finished. It's been this way for a very long time. And I've been telling you for a very long time, it's going to get real. It's going to get very real. It's been a drug. It's been a heroin that's being pushed into the market and this economy, giving the illusion of some type of prosperity. No, I'm sorry. Nothing is real. Nothing what it seems to be. Okay? This is just, again, it's a deliberate act by central banks to wipe out an entire class of people, and it's happening.
Level, which is doing the surveillance and actually doing what I call germ games, where you practice. You say, okay, what if a bioterrorist brought smallpox to 10 airports? How would the world respond?
And what the central banks are going to do right now, on top of fueling crisis after crisis after crisis, billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars being thrown at crisis, COVID, monkeypox, wars, and everything else. You think this is not inflationary? Really? Now, you see, we haven't seen anything yet because this is all deliberate. It's not going to stop. All you're going to hear is from retarded politicians, none more so than Franken-Mummy himself, who will not point his finger at the Federal Reserve, neither would the last president or the one before that, because they all wanted their central bank to keep pumping that market. Look at the stock market, yes, our economy is booming. Could have been further from the truth. Okay, you all got lied to and you all bought it. A lot of you bought it. It's all bullshit. Not those of you who understand what's really going on here. It's all total dog shit. And now we're all paying the price of president after president after president calling on the central bank, the Federal Reserve, to continue to inflate. That's all this has been. Keep pumping that easy money into the market. Keep rates suppressed. Rob savers blind. Any one of them who have an interest earning account, even if it's a high yield account. You can't make this stuff up if you try to, people.
We need to accept that there will be some pain in the process. The pace that we need will open up for missteps. It will open up for shortages on energy. It will create inflationary pressures, and maybe we need to start talking about that pain is actually worth it, because if we don't, there's no business case, there's no economy, there's no welfare. But so far, I think we have been a little bit careful actually talking about the pain in the short term that is likely to come from this very important change. Yeah.
Well, the Running Man was not really done for that purpose, to do anything against network or make fun at them or whatever. Although a lot of it is today already a reality that you see in the film, that whole competition for ratings and all that. But it's just an idea that you say, okay, let's assume this is happening. Let's assume there's an economic disaster in a future time, let's say 2013 or 19 or whenever it happened. And the networks are competing against each other for ratings. The government is involved, and they are actually paying the networks in order to keep the people away from the streets, from rioting, and keep them glued to the TV set. And everyone is hooked together, government, network, and dictatorship, and economic disaster. And now what will happen with a game show like The Running Man, which is the most popular show, in order to create the highest rating?
Fast forward 5 years. Do we have a central bank digital coin out there in the world that is being utilized on a daily basis, whether it's wholesale or retail, and it becomes a superior system? Francois, yes or no?
We have several experiments which are not very far from that. They're not yet generalized, but they could be, let's say, the next 3 years, probably. It will go quicker on the wholesale side,
Yes.
I guess, because it raises less sensitive questions.
Yes, Axel.
No, I'm quite glad to hear what you're saying, Francois, on the wholesale digital currency, not coin. I am also a believer that will come in 5 years. Yes, what I try to say is obviously, we still have those huge legacy environment. They need to migrate as well, so we will not yet see all the benefits coming through, but it will come and will be much more efficient, also probably much more secure, lowering transaction costs. On the retail side, I'm much more skeptical. Certainly call it for the established economies.
Former President George W. Bush was delivering a speech at his presidential center today at Southern Methodist University in Texas. And while talking about Russia and its president, he made what must be one of the biggest Freudian slips of all time.
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.
We need an energy transformation on the scale of the Industrial Revolution at the speed of the digital transformation, and therefore we need a revolution in finance.
Okay, just think about that for a moment. On the scale of the Industrial Revolution, do you realize how big that was for the world at that time? This is what he's comparing it to. And the speed of the digital revolution. The digital revolution, you've never seen such speed because of the incremental improvements in terms of how digital can improve upon itself. So anyone that thinks this is going to be very, very slow and all these things are going to take time, no, he's saying it right there. This is going to be fast and impactful.
Let's bring in UFO documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. This is your specialty. You've been working on this for years now. Thank you for being with us today on such a big day. This is for you, and can we say the UFO community?
Absolutely, the UFO community, yeah.
Okay, so what is the biggest revelation you think from today's hearings?
First of all, UFOs are not a matter of belief. That's a data-poor perspective, and this is a data-rich environment. So if you look at it this way, every day human knowledge expands, and that's what we're seeing today. Today was this landmark moment. It was a moment a lot of people were asking for, and representative government came forward and offered this. It's the first time in 50 years that we've had open congressional hearings on the subject of UFOs. And not only that, today there was a pressure that was put on our intelligence agencies and our Department of Defense to fess up about what they know. And what they know is that UFOs are real, that they're physical objects, that they are advanced craft, that they outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform any of our war technology. So they showed new footage today, actually. They showed new footage. So that is a symbol or a sign of UFO transparency. We're living in a different world. We're now living in a world, your children are gonna grow up, and the UFO mystery, the scientific community is gonna look at this.
But also bringing it forward from that, 5-year decarbonization plans that need to be rolled out and annual reporting.
5-year plans that need to be rolled out and annual reporting. Can you see how strict all of this criteria is? I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, or many of their mind, that they are going to achieve what they're talking about here. I just don't see how it's not going to happen with the speed, the commitment, and the amount of money that is behind this initiative.
What the institutions are doing is working through and developing those decarbonization plans, and it won't surprise you that that means engaging with the people they invest in or lend to for their own plans.
Again, he just said it right there and then. Those institutions are going to be putting pressure on the institutions below them that they manage and look after to create their own plans. So the way they've done it is very clever. They've gone for the top stakeholders first, those with the biggest sort of spread across the financial industries globally, and they've started with those, and they're getting those to put pressure below them, those to put pressure below them. It is just like this whole pyramid model all over again. They're applying the same model that they've applied to other sectors.
There's this whole new thing of a client transition plan, a whole new ask. So this year we published in February our targets for oil and gas and power and utility sectors, the most carbon intensive.
Okay, you just heard it there. Oil and gas, power and utilities. What have we been talking about here on the channel? Where have some of the biggest challenges come from? Oil and gas, power and utilities. Oil and gas, this is where we're seeing these exploding prices. Why? Because people like these people here on stage are stopping the investment via the ESG mandates, environmental social governance mandates, into those industries. This is why prices are exploding, and we're running out of energy that is available through the current means of extraction.
What we expect from private companies for their plans. Last point I'll make by way of introduction is this is about real world decarbonization, not the false comfort of portfolio decarbonization.
You heard it there from the horse's mouth. Okay, so two things. Number one, they're going to put pressure on private companies for their decarbonization plans. But number two, he said, this isn't, like what he's explaining there is, this isn't just like offsetting, how some of these companies do carbon offsetting, but it hasn't made any difference in carbon emissions. He's saying right there that they are going to create decarbonization.
In general, your people are completely uninterested in the perspectives we bring to the table. The rape, the killing, the genocide, the theft, the destruction, the injustices, the lies are all something that just happened, right? We should just get over it. Your silence is deafening. In fact, a very substantial percentage of your people are in favor of maintaining the programs that stimulate our demise and evolve that silence. You are uninterested in having these discussions, let alone being a part of having anything to do with our situation. You are the masters of collusion. The system itself is designed to cloud over and hide the nature of your collusion. The universe itself is designed to hide your involvement with the criminal powers of the world. Don't for a second think that we all just happen to miss the fact that NASA, the heliocentric universe, and the world wars were all but completely pushed and orchestrated by your people. How many videos have you seen about that? How many books were written breaking that relationship down? Any podcasts having this discussion without the risk of being deplatformed by that very system? The relationship your people have with the overall breaking down and destroying of the natural systems we experience here is a conversation people are actively avoiding, as if it doesn't exist. In fact, your system forces us to celebrate your destructive so-called achievements on a regular basis. Regularly scheduled pledges of allegiance. This is an extremely toxic relationship we are in with you. We need to have a serious discussion about your historical and current involvements with these systems that are having serious effects on the vast majority of people in the world. And before you play the victim and claim that we are blaming or shaming you, like a toxic narcissistic abuser would do when their victims start to speak directly to the situation, know that no amount of misdirection or distraction will erase the crystal clear awareness we have regarding the situation. And the more you not only stay silent on these issues, but actively profit from our situation, the more you will bury yourself underneath the ashes of this establishment as it slowly but surely burns to the ground. And before you attempt to discredit us by claiming to be the sole owners of knowing how humanity needs to act and respond to this situation, know that we are also no longer listening to you. You have lost all credibility in the human discussion, and your blind arrogance is an embarrassment to our story. We are writing our story from now on. Your time is up. And since you are either incapable of are not interested in truly listening to what we have to say. A growing majority of us have decided to separate from you, possibly indefinitely. It would be unintelligent and unhealthy for us to continue on with this relationship, given the extreme levels of toxic and destructive behavior you have inflicted upon us. This is not the same as your segregation birthed by racism, ignorance, and hatred. It's a separation from an abusive constituent on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. As we would no longer be interested in the empty apologies and promises from a narcissistic abuser, we are uninterested in your response on this matter. You can keep your his story. We will carry on with telling the story as it is. And in time, our story will be heard.